Hello guys, welcome to this episode of It's Raining That Straw. Today's video you will learn about hatching and cross-hatching. You may have heard about this technique before, and it's a drawing technique which is a fundamental drawing technique because it's really good at describing shapes, and it's a way to get a basic understanding of volume and depth. So before we start, let me just point out one thing. These are not rules, but simply based on my own experience. You can go ahead. I urge you to go ahead and experiment after watching this video. Let's go and take a look at the fundamentals of this technique. There are generally 4 directions that our line can go when we hatch, and they are the following. Horizontal lines here, and we have vertical lines. We have diagonal lines, and of course they can go the other way as well. And then we have curved lines. Also they can go the other way. So these hatching lines are essentially parallel lines that follow the same direction. But these lines are not fun just standing alone, so let's go ahead and apply them on an object. And the very basic object that you want to be able to draw or to describe is the cube. So let's go ahead and see if we can just sketch out here a cube. Let's go. Okay, so we have our cube here, and let's go ahead and apply the first strokes here, which are the horizontal. We just noticed that this cube is in perspective right now, so our horizontal lines are of course going to follow the lines of these perspective lines. So let's go ahead and add horizontal lines here. It's as easy as that. That was hatching. So note that my strokes go this way. Let's go ahead and do the other side here using the horizontal lines. And this is a bit easier because due to perspective, these lines just follow this line and this line over here. So just by using horizontal and vertical hatching lines, we now already have a sense of a 3-dimensional form here. Now let's go ahead to another direction, and I'm going to draw another cube here. We're moving on to the diagonal hatchings. So let me start by going and describing this by using diagonal. Same thing, we get a sense that this part here is in shade, and somewhere up here we have some light coming on from here, hitting this surface here. Let's go ahead and add the other lines here of the vertical strokes, or sorry, the diagonal strokes here. Like so. And this is of course a different kind of feeling you get having these diagonal strokes. More dynamic, I'd say, but I still think that these describe the form more accurate. We now have our hatching technique here, but let's take a look at cross-hatching, because this is where it gets really interesting. Now cross-hatching is essentially lines that go oblique to our lines here. So for instance, you have some horizontal lines here, and if you can then go ahead and add vertical strokes, you have cross-hatching. Now the good thing about cross-hatching is that this technique shows us that there's a way to create much darker tones and thereby depth. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first cube here and add some vertical lines crossing our horizontal lines. So there you see that this part over here, this side of the cube, seems more in shape than this part, thus creating a difference between them and then three-dimensionality. We can then go ahead and add to our cross-hatching by using diagonal lines on top of our cross-hatchings. So let's see what happens. Diagonal lines, and then try to make sure that you kind of hit the white spaces in between here with the diagonal areas. This way we have a sense now that you have a dark tone here, a middle tone here, and then a blank surface here, which really creates this three-dimensionality. The same thing on this cube over here. You can go ahead and add some lines here. You know, just keep on adding more and more tone, and you can actually keep on doing that until you have a complete black surface. I like that you have some light showing through here. This is the great thing about cross-hatching. I think you have some light showing through, which creates this, I don't know, good texture. So you can see the basics of cross-hatching is that as we add more tone with the strokes, the three-dimensional effect gets stronger. Adding strokes lets you kind of control how the light is entering your form and how deep you want to go. For instance, you could also have the light coming from here on this cube. Then I would have this surface up here receive less light. Making this part stand more out. Maybe I should even add some more here. And then you have like this dark tone here, and then you have a mid-tone here and here actually, and then you can have, without using any strokes at all, you can have your light tone. So this was the cube. Let's move on to a different object now. So I just cheated a bit. I already drew the cylinder. In this first example over here, I've been using vertical strokes here that follows the shape, but we got to remember that the cylinder has a round shape here. So for round shapes, I think it's better to use curved strokes here, curved hatchings, to describe the shape better. So notice how they go this way, following the shape here that dictates those curves, following the shape of the cylinder. This creates a much more convincing description of the shape. And then I've actually gone along and playing a little bit with creating more tone using curved strokes that cross these, creating cross hatchings by using curves on top of curves. There's a general thumb rule that the core shadow of an object is always 90 degrees from the source of the primary light of your object. I usually draw using a lot of intuition, but this is a rule that you can use. Another shape aside from the cylinder here is the cone here, and it's quite interesting, but because here you have the shape of the cylinder, of the base here, but ending up in a point. So how should we describe this shape? I think that you can go two ways here. I think that you can easily, because this has the same thing if you depict a skeleton going here of the shape. You know, it has a volume, this shape. If we depict this, you could go ahead and add some curves here. following those imaginative lines. But also I think you can go ahead and do horizontal lines that follow the line of the cone here. So this is an object where you can do both things. Let's move on to the last shape here, which is the sphere. Not a perfect sphere, but indeed a sphere. The thing about the sphere is that you can actually choose to render this in many different ways with cross-hatchings and hatchings. But you'll receive different effects, and as I pointed out in the beginning, these are meant to be guidelines and not rules as such. Some people prefer to go diagonal on a sphere here. Some people prefer to use curves, again following the shape, following the imaginative lines here of the sphere. You can go this way, you can go around it like that. And some people again prefer to mix all kinds of stuff, so they could go like this to describe the shape. The important thing here is to remember that you should picture a highlight on the shape. So we have a highlight here, for instance. We would then have, according to the 90 degrees rule, coarse shadow around here. So just keep that in mind when you start hatching. Let's go ahead and add some curved lines here to describe the object. So we have around here. And then we add a core shadow here by going cross-hatching here. I think I'm gonna go with the curves. Like so. Using diagonal lines, it will look like something like this. Again, I'm imagining that I'm having a highlight here. And we can then go ahead and just add some diagonal curves here. And then we have this core shadow coming down here. Once you start to become familiar with this technique of hatching and cross-hatching and start drawing things in your sketchbook or draw things you see using this technique, it will fall natural to you to start play around with these shapes, and it will fall natural to you whether you should go with curves on a round shape or whether you should go horizontal on other shapes. The important thing is to remember that just experiment with it, because there are no rules really. Artists use them in many different ways, and there's nothing preventing you from using a curved line, for instance, to describe a cubic sphere. The only thing you will get is a different effect, really. Drawing is about having fun, so go ahead and experiment. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Soon I'll be making a video on how to cross-hatch organic shapes, so make sure to subscribe to this channel for more drawing tips and exercises. And have fun drawing.